Australia, a land of golden beaches, sprawling deserts, and a thriving multicultural society. But what if I told you everything you thought you knew about life here is only half the story? Beyond the Instagram perfect views of Sydney's Opera House and the laid-back "g'day mate" culture lies a reality that most outsiders never see. Because life in Australia? It's not just sunshine and barbecues. It's a story of survival, a land where nature is both breathtaking and merciless, a country of extremes where wealth and poverty exist side by side, and where the fight for identity, culture, and the future is more intense than ever. So, what is life really like in Australia? Let's find out. To understand life in Australia, we have to go back, not just years, but thousands of years. Long before British ships arrived in 1788, this land belonged to the world's oldest living civilization, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Their history, over 65,000 years deep, a culture so rich, so ancient. Yet today, many of their voices are still fighting to be heard. Fast forward to modern Australia, a country that's home to over 26 million people, where more than 30% of residents were born overseas. It's a land shaped by migration, yet divided by inequality. A first-world economy, with third-world struggles hidden beneath the surface. Australia is a country where a single coffee can cost you $7, but a university degree can leave you drowning in debt. Where minimum wage is among the highest in the world, yet the cost of living is soaring to record highs. And where, despite its image of endless summer, bushfires and floods can wipe out entire communities in an instant. So, what does it really mean to live here? Let's break it down. Imagine this. It's a Monday morning in Sydney. You wake up before sunrise because in this city, the daily commute is a battle. With housing prices through the roof, many people live over an hour away from where they work. You grab your $6 coffee, rush to the overcrowded train, and hope that today, the delays won't make you late. Meanwhile, in rural Australia, a farmer stares at the sky, praying for rain that may never come. Years of drought have turned his land into dust, his debts piling up. And in a town hundreds of miles away, an Indigenous family is struggling to access clean drinking water. Yes, in one of the richest countries on Earth. This is Australia, the Australia tourists don't see. A country of booming cities yet declining small towns. A nation of innovation, yet a growing homeless crisis. Where some people spend weekends at luxury rooftop bars, while others sleep in their cars, unable to afford rent. But if you think that's shocking, wait until you hear this. In the last decade, Australia's cost of living has skyrocketed. Groceries? Up by nearly 20% in the last 3 years. Rent? Some families are spending over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And buying a home? Forget about it. In Sydney, the median house price is over $1 million. That means for the average worker, owning a home is no longer a dream. It's a fantasy. But here's where things take a darker turn. While many Australians struggle to pay their bills, billionaire mining companies continue to profit from the country's vast natural resources. The wealth gap? Widening every year? And in a nation known for its fair-go attitude, the question remains, is Australia still the land of opportunity? Australia is more than just Sydney and Melbourne. It's a land of untamed beauty and unseen struggles. Beyond the city lights, there are remote Indigenous communities where people still fight for access to education, employment, and even healthcare. In Western Australia, some towns are so isolated, it takes hours, sometimes days, to reach the nearest hospital. And in the Northern Territory, youth incarceration rates are some of the highest in the world, disproportionately affecting Aboriginal children. These are stories you won't find in travel brochures. But here's the thing. Life in Australia isn't just hardship, it's resilience. It's people coming together after bushfires wipe out entire neighborhoods. It's local communities raising millions for those in need. It's a culture of mateship, where, no matter how tough life gets, Australians always find a way to lift each other up. So, what's the truth? Is Australia a paradise or a place of hidden struggles? The answer? Both. For many, Australia is seen as a modern, developed nation. But there's a part of its history that remains deeply controversial. A history of stolen land, stolen generations, and stolen futures. For over 150 years, Indigenous Australian children were forcibly removed from their families under government policies designed to erase their culture. They were placed in institutions, foster homes, and white families, stripped of their language, their traditions, and their identity. This is known as the Stolen Generations, one of the darkest stains on Australian history. And the consequences? Still felt today. Indigenous Australians make up 3.8% of the population, yet they account for over 30% of the prison population. Youth suicide rates among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities? Among the highest in the world. Life expectancy? Up to 8 years lower than non-Indigenous Australians. And the fight for recognition? Still ongoing. The 2023 referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament, a movement seeking constitutional recognition, was rejected by a national vote, sparking division and heartbreak across the country. So the question remains, how does a country move forward when parts of its past are still unresolved? If you ask most people what drives Australia's economy, they might say tourism, agriculture, or real estate. But the real answer? It's something far more powerful and far more controversial. Mining. Australia is one of the world's biggest exporters of iron ore, coal, and gas, bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars every year. But while mining companies rake in massive profits, small communities pay the price. In Western Australia, entire towns are swallowed by mining operations, forcing families to relocate as billion-dollar projects expand. In Queensland, Indigenous land is being cleared for coal mines, despite ongoing protests. And in New South Wales, one of the country's most sacred Aboriginal sites, the Juukan Gorge, was destroyed by a mining company in 2020, sparking global outrage. The government defends mining as essential for the economy. But at what cost? Because while fossil fuel companies continue to thrive, Australia is facing another silent crisis, one that threatens the very land itself. Australia is a country of extremes, and nowhere is that more obvious than in its climate. In the past decade alone, 2019, the Black Summer bushfires burned 18 million hectares, killing 3 billion animals. 2022, the worst floods in history destroy towns across New South Wales and Queensland. 2023, the hottest summer on record with temperatures soaring past 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit. For many Australians, climate change isn't just a debate, it's a daily reality. Farmers losing their land, coastal towns disappearing underwater, entire species being wiped out. And yet, Australia remains one of the biggest coal exporters in the world. So, will Australia lead the way in renewable energy? Or will it be one of the last countries to let go of fossil fuels? We've talked about the cost of living crisis. But what if I told you, for many Australians, owning a home is now impossible? Because in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, housing prices have hit record highs. Average house price in Sydney? Over $1.2 million. Rent for a one-bedroom apartment? Nearly $700 per week. Meanwhile, homelessness is rising. Families are forced to live in cars and motels. And young Australians? Many are giving up on the dream of homeownership altogether. But here's the real question. If locals can't afford to live in their own country, who is Australia being built for? So, where does all of this leave Australia? A country of wealth, yet deep inequality. A nation of innovation, yet stuck in the past. A land of natural beauty, yet facing an environmental crisis. But perhaps the most important question isn't what Australia is today, but what kind of country it wants to become. Because the truth is, Australia is at a crossroads. Does it embrace its diversity or let division grow? Does it protect its environment or prioritize profit? Does it learn from its past or continue to rewrite it? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Australia is changing. And in the next decade, the country you know today might be completely unrecognizable. So now we ask you, is Australia truly the lucky country? Or is that just an illusion? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the world's most misunderstood places, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the world isn't always what it seems, and the next country we uncover might just change the way you see everything.